skills and represents the greatest contribution to engineering progress and mankind by the American Society of Civil Engineers. Let's take a look at what we achieved. We have 60-foot spans. We have a perimeter structure, which is like a tube structure, and this inner core. Let's take a look at it. Most high-rises up to this time were built on a dense grid of steel or concrete frames all the way throughout the building in a 20 or 30-foot grid. The Twin Towers were built as a tube structure with a very dense, strong mesh of steel surrounding the exterior and acting as a bearing wall, which resists the lateral loads, earthquake, and in the case of this building, particularly wind. Hurricanes up to 140 miles an hour it was designed to resist. This perimeter structure was 14-inch columns, 3 foot 9 inches on center. Inside was this core, a dense grid of 47 immense box columns, 4-inch thick at the base, 2-inch thick at mid-height. Prefabricated floor assemblies with 22-gauge steel decking, over which was poured reinforced concrete and held up by 29-inch deep open-web steel trusses. All of this, by the way, was completely pulverized on this floor structure on 9/11. We'll take a look at that. Now, these trusses were bolted to the perimeter columns and the core columns with these 5/8-inch bolts, which we talked about the different theories about what happened to those bolts. Now, this is a structure within a structure. This dense core structure would have remained standing 1,300 feet in the air if this surrounding, less strong floor structure were to have collapsed around it. In fact, the perimeter structure probably would have been left standing for a while until its lack of support gave in. This is the core columns, 52 inches by 22 inches along the long edge, almost solid steel at the bottom, continuously welded from the bottom all the way to the top. Now, any 1,800-degree fire would have been almost immediately conducted throughout this 100,000-ton heat sink. That's the reason there's been no collapse of steel frame high-rise fires, because of this steel. Hold a spoon over the stove. See how long you can hang on to it. Almost instantly, you'll be forced to let it go. Let's take a look at the structural imperative that was given to John Skilling.
John Skilling and Les Robertson were the structural engineers who designed the streamlined steel frames of the Twin Towers in the 1960s. Because a wayward Army bomber flew into the Empire State Building in 1945, the towers were built with skyscraper crashes in mind.
We had designed the project for the impact of our largest airplane of its time, the Boeing 707. That is to take this jet airplane, run it into the building, destroy a lot of structure, and still have it stand up.
The building was designed to have a fully loaded 707 crash into it. That was the largest plane at the time. I believe that the building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners because this structure is like the mosquito netting on your screen door, this intense grid, and the jet plane is just a pencil puncturing that screen netting. It really does nothing to the screen netting.
A very robust structure, in fact. The forces coming down routed themselves around. They arched around the opening created by the airplane. In fact, Iger says the towers withstood the initial impact of the aircraft. This ability to withstand the initial impact is hardly surprising, given the robust nature. Now, we have the North Tower being hit at 8:46 in the morning, and about 102 minutes later, after fires traveled around the floors and up the floors in the case of the North Tower, the building did collapse. The South Tower was hit about 15 minutes later, and after only about 56 minutes, it collapses, as the fires were in fact diminishing severely. Skilling noted that he designed the towers to take a hit from a Boeing 707 traveling 600 miles an hour. When he was asked if he considered plane crashes, he cites, "Our analysis indicated the biggest problem would be the fact that all the fuel would dump into the building, but the building structure would still be there." This is FEMA's theory. We have the sagging of the trusses and the pulling away from the column, and then the subsequent pancaking down. Again, the trusses, one after the other, 6 foot 8 inches, every truss disengaging from the perimeter wall, which would have to be, at the rate that these buildings fell, that would have been at the speed of sound, the disengagement from one truss to the next, all the way around the building, and then the next floor and the next floor and the next floor. So NIST turns it around and blames the persistence of these connections pulling in the columns, causing the columns to buckle. Now, it's generally more difficult for people to understand that the towers were a controlled demolition because it was so outside of our frame of reference. We'd never seen anything like this. So this, combined with the shock, kept us from being objective. But if you were to plan a fire-induced collapse as a result of airplanes, you'd start the explosions at the point of jet plane impacts. So in World Trade Center 2 and 1, we have all of the key characteristic features of controlled demolitions, but with some of these key differences. We have a beginning of detonation at the point of jet plane impacts, not at the base of the building. In addition, we have not an implosion, but where everything is being exploded outside the footprint. We have squibs, or these mistimed explosions, that occur 20, 40, and even 60 stories down below. And as we already discussed the evidence for thermite in the molten metal and in the dust in the iron-rich microspheres. So let's take a look, starting with the sudden onset. What is the evidence for this, and how is it produced? Produced by these sounds and flashes from the explosions. Now, the city's fire commissioner, Thomas von Essen, requires all of his EMTs and firefighters to record their experiences, about 500 of them, and in 12,000 pages, as it turns out, collected from 2001 to 2002. The New York State Court of Appeals overturns the city's request to hold on to this information against the lawsuit by the New York Times. They failed, and why was the city holding on to this information? Was it because 118 of these firefighters witnessed sounds and flashes of explosions? We felt the ground shake. You could see the tower sway, and then it just came down. All of a sudden, the ground just started shaking. It shook my bones. Shortly before the first tower came down, I remember feeling the ground shaking. Somewhere around the middle of the World Trade Center, there was this orange and red flash coming out. Initially, just one flash. Then it just kept popping all the way around the building. The building had started to explode. It's like on television, they blow up these buildings. Seemed like it was going all the way around, like a belt. All these explosions. Pop, pop, pop. That's when I heard the building coming down. Saw a brief number of light sources being emitted from inside the building between floors 10 and 15. I saw low-level flashes. We actually heard the pops. You know, you heard the pops of the building. It was blowing out on all four sides. With each popping sound, it was initially an orange, and then a red flash came out of the building. Then it would just go around the building on both sides. I saw a flash, 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 and then it looked like the building came down. I thought the terrorists planted explosives somewhere in the building. That's how loud it was, a crackling explosive. Well, you can hear that explosive in this video.
Yeah, here's one of the guys who can tell you I'm okay, all right? Here, hold on. You want to call your mother or something?
Does that sound like a fire or collapsing floors? None of these explosions are a part of the official story. Another loud boom at the upper floors, and then there was a series of smaller explosions which appeared to go completely around the building at the upper floors. Before it came down, I saw low-level flashes. Flash, 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 and then it looked like the building came down. Did you see any flashes? I said, yeah. I thought it was just me. He said, no, I saw them too. What did these guys experience?
We started running, floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was like, if they had detonated.
Yeah,
If they
detonated,
were planned to
yeah.
take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down.
How about the news reporters? What do they say? They tend to tell the truth, as we